Who is the bigger disappointment, Yoan Moncada or Eloy Jimenez? And is Andrew Vaughn an even bigger disappointment than those two? Let's discuss next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, former White Sox DH Eloy Jimenez joined Yoan Moncada in free agency after his option was declined by the Baltimore Orioles. Both were supposed to be cornerstone players for the Sox contention window. Instead, both were always injured. So let's discuss who is the bigger disappointment and if Andrew Vaughn is even more disappointing than those two. Then Anthony Rizzo's name has been speculated on White Sox Twitter as a solid veteran free agent to add in the offseason. Let's discuss why that would be a mistake. And finally, let's kick off a Minor League Monday recap of how the Sox top prospects did. And let's review top prospect Noah Schultz's season and the hope he brings to you and I. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, shout out to former Locked On White Sox host and current co-host of the CHGO White Sox podcast, Herb Lawrence, for being the inspiration of taking this beyond saying if Moncada or Eloy was the bigger disappointment on the South Side, like I had planned for today's show, because he threw in a nice little wrinkle when it came to Andrew Vaughn when he tweeted this out, and this is at Ecknerwall23, tweeted out on November 2nd. That's what he said. I get why people feel like this as of late, but both of those guys at the top, especially Moncada, have had at least one season where they've met or exceeded expectations. Vaughn has never been the guy he was promised to be. Hell, Moncada had a higher F4 in 2024 in 137 fewer games. And that was the response to Shy Sox fan Mike of Sports Mockery's tweets about his top 5 disappointments. He had Eloy at the top, Moncada 2, and then Vaughn 5. And I feel Yoan Moncada is the most frustrating of the three just because he was considered a top 5 prospect coming into his White Sox career. He was number 1, according to one service. He was usually number 2, according to most. And he did deliver 2 good seasons. There was hope that he was going to be a superstar, but injuries always just kept getting in the way. And then when he was healthy, there was a period where he was just so inconsistent. You never knew what type of Yoan Moncada you were going to get. And that, I would say, is the most frustrating because there was a very, very good baseball player. And he was showing in the first 12 games that he was going to have a really good season. And then he injured his hip. And then he was never heard from again. Eloy and Vaughn. Now, there is an interesting comparison. However, I'm going to put still Eloy at the top. I'm going to rank Vaughn second. And then I would put Moncada third in terms of the biggest disappointments of the three. And it's a few reasons. First, Eloy got paid when he shouldn't have. I mean, the man got a 6-year, $43 million deal, and he hit 94 home runs, with 31 of those 94 home runs coming in 2019. He basically just produced one season where you're like, man, this guy's going to slug the heck out of the ball. And then he never did it again. Now, he did win a Silver Slugger in 2020, but while it was officially a season in 60 games, you really should put an asterisk next to anybody, even Jose Abreu. Yes, he won an MVP. And dare I have that blasphemy, but it was 60 games. Let's stretch it out. How would it have looked? I still think Jose Abreu would have won the MVP, though, in 2020. It's just, you can't really put a lot of stock into what happened in 2020. But Eloy was never available. And when he was, he hit 50 home runs from 2021 to 2024. 50 over 3 seasons when you're supposed to be a slugger. And he did post 3 seasons where his F4 was above 1, with his best coming in 2022 at 1.7. So that's where I'm glad that Herb brought in Andrew Vaughn's name into the conversation, because Andrew Vaughn has never put together a season where his WAR has been above 1. Never. 4 seasons, no WAR above 1. But here's the thing. Vaughn's still going to be in the majors next year. Eloy likely will have to go to Japan or Korea with his inability to no longer put the ball in the air. That's how far his career has deteriorated. that he's going to have to go overseas probably to reclaim, to revive himself, because he can't play the outfield well. So all Eloy can do is DH. And outside of 2019, he's never done a good job of putting the ball in the air as a DH. He has a career 31.1% fly ball percentage. 31% of the time he's putting the ball in the air. That's not good enough if you're a slugger. He finished 2024 with 6 home runs, just 1 with the Orioles, and a 28.6 fly ball percentage. And you could probably speculate how much of the injuries rob his legs of being able to even put the ball in the air. But he's never, ever been a good fly ball hitter. And you're supposed to be a slugger. You are a giant of a man at the plate. I mean, Eloy is huge. Look at him when he's at the plate. He is massive. And he basically hits ground balls. That's not good enough. Even Gavin Sheets, another terrible fielding outfielder, mostly a DH, had a 41.4 fly ball percentage in 2024. Andrew Vaughn even lifted the ball in the air 45.8% of the time. Now, fly ball shouldn't be the reason Eloy is the bigger bust than Vaughn, but it just shows you that Jimenez, you can't even categorize him as a slugger anymore. You can't. He had 1 season where he hit 31 home runs. That's it. Otherwise, he doesn't put the ball in the air. He doesn't hit well enough. He doesn't hit for a high enough average to be like Luis Ariz, and he doesn't field well. You can't even classify him as a big league player then. And Vaughn gets criticized because he's just a replacement level player at a position where you can find that anywhere for less than $6 million, but at least he's a replacement level player. Those guys do have big league careers. He just should have been more. Eloy's at Diane Viciato levels. Vaughn is at least 2018 Daniel Palka levels. Daniel Palka's 2018 season gave us some hope. 240 average, 484 slug, 27 homers, and a minus 0.1 F4. Those were the days. I mean, think about it. Andrew Vaughn just produced a 246 average, a 402 slug, 19 home runs, and a minus 0.2 F4. So, again, that's why Herb is right for pointing out the criticism of Vaughn. And obviously, Shy Sox fan Mike is right for putting him in the top 5. And I even got to admit that, I still haven't considered it. But you're right. For a guy that's being a top 5 pick, you should be getting more than replacement level production, especially at such an iconic position in the Sox franchise. I mean, Frank Thomas, even though he didn't play a ton of first, but he was there first. Paul Konerko, Jose Abreu. Andrew Vaughn was supposed to be the next guy. And he's just been nothing but replacement level. And he also represents the terrible drafting that the team did in the previous rebuild. You shouldn't be taking a first baseman in the top 5. I'm sorry. I mean, unless he shows something absolutely special like Jack Caglione, and even then, you can get first baseman anywhere. And I'm not convinced. There are still those that are holding out hope that Andrew Vaughn will still develop into the guy that he's supposed to be, a stud first baseman, the next Paul Konerko. I'm just sorry. It's been 4 years of just replacement level production. And I think that's all he's ever going to be. And guys, I was on the Andrew Vaughn's going to be an all-star in 2024 bandwagon. I predicted it, wrote it on SouthsideShowdown.com. I was like, this is going to be the year Andrew Vaughn is going to be an all-star. I even leaned into the bit on social media, and it's just not happening. So I'm sorry, after 4 years of evidence, I got to pull myself out. And for those that are saying, well, they should bring Andrew Vaughn back because it's going to be $6 million. Well, first of all, the Sox are claiming poverty. That's the first thing. And secondly, I don't see a trade market for him next year. Because I think that's the other thing. People are like, well, let's bring him back. Hope he has a good year. And then there's going to be a trade deadline for him. Trade market at the trade deadline for him. I don't see that happening, folks. And I hate to break it to you, but there's not a great trade market for first baseman. And also, again, I don't want to pay him $6 million. You can go with Tim Elko, who's going to come much cheaper, who could provide at least a 2018 Daniel Palka ceiling. Shout out to Beefloaf from the 108 for pointing that out. And I hope it is 2018. And I do think Elko, though, is going to produce a higher average at the big leagues. And I think he's going to make better contact, even though he does strike out a lot. I do think he's going to make better contact to avoid a 2019 Palka decline and actually have more than a 2-year big league career. but still, you could have a cheaper alternative in Daniel Palka. Or I'm going to go over a few names just in a second to just show you how weak the trade market is for the first base. Because for those Vaughn truthers that are like, well, let's bring him back, try to trade him at the deadline. Here's what the market produced for first baseman at the trade deadline. The Tigers got a double-A right-handed reliever from the Giants for Mark Canha. And Mark Canha was a 1 F4 player who's a free agent. By the way, he might actually be someone the Sox should kick the tires on. And he also gets on base, a 344 on-base percentage. And he can actually play the outfield, and I've seen it with my own two eyes. He can actually play a decent outfield, where Andrew Vaughn can't. The Marlins got cash and a player to be named later from the Diamondbacks for Josh Bell. Bell hit 19 homers, had a 249 average, finished as a minus 0.1 F4 player, had a WRC plus of 101. All numbers just a little bit better than Vaughn. And he's 32, and all he got was a player to be named later. Now, Vaughn could maybe yield a named player, but I don't think it would be even a high ceiling scratch off prospect either. I mean, the Padres traded for Garrett Cooper in 2023 at the deadline, but that was an exchange of big leaguers among contenders as San Diego sent reliever Ryan Weathers. The Angels gave up 2 A-ball pitchers to the Rockies in 2023 as part of a deal to get C.J. Cron, but he came with outfielder Randall Grichuk. The Brewers traded for Carlos Santana in 2023. They did send the Pirates a lottery ticket prospect in Johnny Severino, and the White Sox could use high ceiling prospects, but I'm not sure Vaughn will reach the production even of Carlos Santana. At least Carlos Santana, heck of a musician, but even the first baseman can hit for power, and he's a Gold Glove winning first baseman. He can actually give you value in the field where Vaughn cannot. And Vaughn just doesn't have the history of being a better than a replacement level player. So, the only thing that keeps Vaughn under Eloy on the rankings is Vaughn is still a big leaguer. Eloy, probably not. All right, Santana is a pending free agent, and so is Cubs legend Anthony Rizzo. And some folks in the Sox social media world think Rizzo would be a fine addition for the White Sox. Let's discuss why that is not the case next on Locked On White Sox. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsback app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And I always maintain FanDuel spreads, over and unders, and money lines. They're fun to play. But if you want to win big, or at least double your money or even triple your money, FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures is the way to go. Popular parlay for tonight is in Kansas City and Tampa's game is Bucky Irving, Kareem Hunt, Cade Otton, and Travis Kelce all scoring an anytime touchdown. It is at plus 39.46, and if it hits and you put, say, $10 on it, the winnings is $394.36. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, so I do love Shy Sox fan Mike of Sports Mockery and James Fox of Future Sox. And I do hope to get James back on the show at some point. He's been on the show a few times. Excellent. Love the work Future Sox does covering the team's prospects, basically the team's hope. But I disagree with their suggestions on White Sox Twitter that bringing Anthony Rizzo to the South Side would be a good idea. The logic is sound for wanting to bring Rizzo. It's just his decline has been so rapid. And the White Sox wasted so much time trotting out bad veteran players that got in the way of giving a runway to the younger players the Sox do have that might actually be big league players and that are actually near the big league level, that I just don't want to see that happen again in 2025. I want a runway for a lot of these younger players that are at or near the big league level. And while the Sox have some exciting prospects at A-ball, it's going to be a while before they get near the big league level. And also then they do have to prove that they are more than just excitement at AA. But the Sox only have so many players that you can say are at or near the big league level that are young that should be given a runway. And I don't want that to be blocked then by Anthony Rizzo. Because right now I can count 9 young position players that I can think of that are close enough to the big leagues or at it. Edgar Caro, Colson Montgomery, Brooks Baldwin, although he technically graduated from prospect status, but I don't think he played enough for me personally to remove that designation. But still, young player at the big league level, still fits the criteria. Lenine Sosa, Dominic Fletcher, the poster boy for not being given a runway, Nick DeLoach, Tim Elko, Brian Ramos, and Oscar Colas. Hopefully, Will Venable abandons the idea that Miguel Vargas is a third baseman and sticks him in the outfield or even first base. So let's run Miguel Vargas up to 10. So we got 10 players that should be given one runway and not be blocked by veteran players. Now, Dominic Fletcher should be platooned in right because he has to prove he can hit. And Nick DeLoach, I'd put in a bench role. All right, so let's take that back down to 8 who should not be blocked. Although, wait, Oscar Colas should be traded in the similar vein that Fletcher and DeLoach came to the Sox. They were older prospects just at the big league, ready to break through at the big league level. There just either wasn't a spot or they got passed by on the organizational chart. So let's just move on because Oscar Colas, I mean, I'm sorry. The Sox can say that they still have hope for him, but he's almost 27 years old. At some point, you either got to give him the at-bats or you just got to move on. And I would say move on. All right, so we're back down to 7 players who should not be blocked. And I want to leave DH open for Caro for whenever he's up next season, as you want his bat in the lineup every day, whether it's at catcher or DH. I would go with the William Contreras route for development, and I don't think we'll be disappointed then if we go with that route. And Anthony Rizzo, if you want to get his bat in the lineup, you either have to put him at first or DH. I don't want DH being clogged up. Also, if Garrett Crochet is traded in the offseason, and hopefully to the Baltimore Orioles, I pray Colby Mayo or Samuel Basallo are part of that package. I don't think you're going to get both, but you might be able to get one or the other. And both can play first base too, so let's not bog first base down with a declining veteran. And also, again, if the Sox are claiming poverty, it'd be better to use the limited financial resources on right field, backup catcher, and bullpen arms. Especially bullpen arms, they were all the rage at the trade deadline this year. So I do think that there is some good to investing in the bullpen, whereas in the previous rebuild, it was not a good idea. In this one, you kind of want to do, if you can get some guys on a 1-year deal or 1 year in an option, that can be attractive if they actually produce then to be flipped at next year's trade deadline. And as I pointed out in the first segment, first basemen were not very attractive at the trade deadline. I get it. You want to bring in a veteran like Rizzo to provide leadership, and you can hope he rebounds enough to have some trade value. But again, the market did not bear much fruit for first baseman. And unless Rizzo turns back the clock to 2016, I doubt anyone is going to be beating down the door to acquire him. And the veteran leadership is nice. But I'm only entertaining bringing him in then. In that case, if you're just going to bring him in for the intangibles of being a leader, you want to bring that in as, say, a non-roster invite. You don't want to be giving him a big league deal. And I'm not sure if his market is going to reach that point. It might, especially with all the regional network finances drying up. So maybe he does reach that point. Then fine. Because there is that connection with new manager Will Venable, since Venable was the Cubs' first and third base coach during some of Rizzo's tenure on the north side. But the decline of Rizzo is startling, and he isn't winning gold gloves like Carlos Santana. I don't think you'd want to, if I had to have Carlos Santana or Anthony Rizzo, I'll go with Carlos Santana because you can at least still get some value in the field. Rizzo has gone from a 2.5 F4 player in 2022 to a minus 0.2 in 2024. His WRC plus has declined over that time from 131 to 84. That's a huge decline. And if you look at his advanced stats, he's bad in all the categories you want to be good at. And he's bad in all the categories you don't want to be bad at. You want to avoid that. He's bad at whiff rate. You don't want to be bad at whiff rate. You want to have a low one. So all you would be getting is leadership, and that's fine and all, but you can get a leader from a backup catcher or a veteran right fielder that you bring in free agency. You can do that. You can even do this thing called develop them. Maybe Corey Lee becomes a leader. I don't know. And if he wants a reunion with Chicago, I have a feeling he'd prefer to sit on the bench with the Cubs because they're at least close to the playoffs. Because you might think he's ideal to be a leader in a rebuild, but I covered him back in 2014 and trust me, he hated. I remember seeing him roll his eyes at all the trade questions that surrounded veteran players. I do. I vividly remember being in the Brewers club, the Brewers away team clubhouse. Mentioned Milwaukee drink, and him shaking his head when I think it was even Carlos Zambrano being asked about his trade status. I remember just being like, oh, he hated the losing in a rebuild. He just did. He hated all the tanking that comes with it. So I don't think he's going to want to come to a dead last place team. I think he's going to probably try to chase another ring if he's offered. And maybe he does respect Will Venable, and maybe he doesn't have a market and he still wants to play. And if that's the case, fine. Bring him in as a non-roster invite. But those are my terms. And you could say, well, the White Sox are so bad, they shouldn't have any terms. Well, they shouldn't also be blocking the runway of their younger players like they did this year. Give these guys runway. I can handle another 100-loss season if it means Brian Ramos turns out to be a very good baseball player. I can handle that. I can handle that if Colson Montgomery does turn out to be Corey Seager, and he's given, at bats from June all the way to September. Heck, I can handle that if Tim Elko is a cheaper replacement than Andrew Vaughn and produces better. I can handle that. But I just don't think he's a good fit because with his decline in this instance, you'd also be better off with than just Vaughn. Or if you wanted a backup coming off the bench, first base, be better off with a younger Gavin Sheets. Get the similar production at this point. Well, speaking of youth, the hope for this team is that is in their younger pitching. And I want to go over some of that hope through the offseason. So let's discuss Sox top pitching prospect and Sox top overall prospect, Noah Schultz, next on Locked On White Sox. I've gotten to see some legendary NBA performances live and in person. I watched Michael Jordan drop 55 on Washington at Old Chicago Stadium. I saw LeBron score 29 of his 55 points against Milwaukee in the third quarter at the Bradley Center. And trust me, if you get a chance to go to an NBA game, do it. Hopefully you can use the Game Time app to get your tickets. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Pick filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy so you know you're getting a good view. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today because what time is it? Game time. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. We just got 2,000 subscribers. Let's keep building up this community. Shout out, thank you to everybody that has been subscribing. Hopefully you're listening and tuning in. And again, tell your fellow White Sox fans, friends, especially even if they've checked out, hey, check out the show every now and again if you want to get a little update, because that's one of the things I'm here for. I'm still watching the White Sox games because I still have this weird emotional attachment to this terrible team. And also tell them to subscribe to wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. All right, so I loved how the Sox handled Noah Schultz's development this year. And if he does realize potential as the second coming of Randy Johnson, teams should study how the Sox handled his development. And if he is the second coming, it'll also mean you and I will not miss Garrett Crochet too much. He is the Sox top pitching prospect who only pitched on Saturdays for 4 innings. And now you might say, he only pitched once a week for 4 innings. How is that good development? It fits so well into understanding that there are only so many pitching bullets these guys have in their arms. So why waste them in the minors? Why? Yes, construct their pitches. Have them throw some of them in the minors so they can master them and command them. but then get him to the big leagues as fast as you can because there's only so many bullets in those arms. It was the one reason I was pleased with the Sox getting Drew Thorp to the big league so quickly. He showed at Double-A that he was getting outs. Get him to the big leagues, because especially for him, it's all about commanding his fastball, and then his changeup is one of the best in all of baseball. So why waste him at Double-A? I'm encouraged by GM Chris Getz and pitching guru Brian Bannister's idea that you should actually develop your pitchers at Double-A, since that's when they start to face their peers, and then use Triple-A as your starting depth / parking lot for the younger pitchers that you don't have a spot for on the big league roster. That's how it should be. I would love to see the Sox continue that formula going forward. Schultz did, though, log 115 and a third innings between 7 starts at High A and 16 at Double-A. So, again, he did at least get over 100 innings of work. He was dominant at Birmingham with a 1.4 ERA, 73 strikeouts, and 17 walks. He had a 1.02 whip. Just absolutely dominated. The most runs he allowed was 4 in a High A game, and the Pensacola Blue Wahoos managed to get 3 runs on him at Double-A. He wasn't giving up a lot of runs at Double-A through those 4 innings. That was even the more impressive stuff. When he did give, like when I saw him in that playoff game, he was only, he only put runners on via walk and a hit by pitch, but then he had enough stuff to get out of the inning very calmly, very eased. He seemed very in control on the mound. He is the 16th overall ranked prospect according to MLB Pipeline, the top overall left-handed starter in all of their rankings. Just Baseball had him ranked at number 12. ESPN had him at number 19 at their midseason rankings, and Fangraphs ranks him 23. MLB.com's White Sox beat reporter Scott Merkin has him as one of the 4 White Sox prospects that could make an impact for the 2025 team. And he had this quote from Director of Player Development Paul Janisch, along with this little paragraph write-up that I want to share. Quote, "This year could not have gone much better for Noah," Janisch said. "The baseball side is pretty dang good, man, but fortifying him in a way that makes him even more able to endure a full season without the amount of innings we're going to ask him to throw is what that's about. He's got his mind right," end quote. Schultz will work in Arizona during the offseason after striking out 115 and walking 24 and 88 and a third innings between High A Winston-Salem and Double-A Birmingham. He wrote this after or before, I believe, Schultz pitched in the playoffs for Birmingham, so he added to his total there. The Southern League champs, back to reading it. "Continuing the physical buildup is the most important factor for Schultz, who has been compared to Southpaws Chris Sale and Randy Johnson at such an early age." And Schultz did win Pitcher of the Year honors for the Southern League. Now all he has to do, as Merkin pointed out, is build up his strength to take on 140 or 160 inning workload, because you don't want this guy coming out of the pen. You don't want him to be like this guy that you deploy, in high leverage situations. You want this guy throwing 6 innings a game every 5 days. And yes, I would love to see him reach his potential, not just because it represents hope, but you and I are going to need a gate attraction after Crochet is likely traded, because I think we're going to have to accept that. I still dream of a realized potential Schultz, a realized potential Hagen Smith teaming up with Garrett Crochet to form a dominant rotation that is rounded out by, say, Jonathan Cannon and Drew Thorp. But the White Sox are in such dire straits that they, to get in, with their lack of impact bats in their system, that they're probably going to have to trade Garrett Crochet just to get those types of players. And they don't pay pitchers, so I doubt Crochet is extended. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every aspect of the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I'll be back tomorrow with hopefully a conversation with White Sox Dave of Barstool to discuss how awful this offseason is going to be for the Southsiders, since they're not spending much in free agency. Excuse me there. I know some of you don't like Barstool, but White Sox Dave has been great at his criticism of the White Sox, that I kind of want to get him on to discuss that. And feel free to leave comments about today's discussion about who is the bigger disappointment between Eloy, Moncada, and Vaughn. Also passing on bringing in Anthony Rizzo and the hope Noah Schultz provides. You can leave those comments at the episode page on YouTube, X/formerly Twitter at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.